telephone, and he's like, "Hey, Jim, do you want a beer?"
She would say that to you?
Yeah, she asked me if I wanted a beer, and then she'd tell me stuff like, "Will you get me a beer?" Made me choke on my coffee.
But a few weeks later, Sadie started imitating Jim.
Yeah. She'll impersonate a little chuckle that I do. It's like, it's even better than Elmo could laugh.
As Sadie spent more time with Jim, she learned to say words and phrases. And then one day,
several weeks after I had her,
something kind of wonderful happened.
I came home and I was like in a really bad mood, and I knew I had to do something.
One of those moments when Jim could just feel he was about to lose control.
So I was trying to talk myself into calming down.
What would that sound like?
I was talking to myself and I was telling myself, "Calm down, you'll be okay, everything's fine, and it's not so bad."
And then
she started repeating it.
Saying, "Calm down, you'll be okay, everything's fine."
Exactly.
Just like Jim was saying.
Word for word. And it's like, wow, and it's like, that gives me an idea.
Jim started rewarding Sadie every time she said something that might help calm him down. Like,
You'll be okay.
Treat.
Everything's fine. It's not as bad as you think.
Treat.
Shut up.
Treat.
I don't want to hear it.
Treat.
I love you, Jim. And she'll make a kissing sound.
Treat.
It just goes on and on and on.
So Jim went online and actually found this special kind of cage that you can carry around on your back.
Then I took her with me just everywhere.
He even got her registered as a service animal. Kind of like a seeing eye dog.
I mean, everywhere.
Where would you go with her?
I've taken her into churches. I've taken her aboard the public buses. Take her to the gym, yes. I've even taken her into like a couple of casinos through here.
And Jim and Sadie had a pretty good situation. When Jim started feeling himself get mad, he'd tell himself, "Calm down." Sadie would repeat him. But then, one day, Sadie did something that went beyond mimicry. Jim says he doesn't exactly remember the first time it happened.
Oh, I can't think of anything right now because I'm like blanking out.
But it probably went something like this. Jim's just out in the neighborhood one day. He's got Sadie in her little backpack cage. And something happens that sets Jim off. I don't know, a car cuts him off at the crosswalk. And immediately, Jim starts getting that tingly feeling.
Yeah.
And then, in the split-second fraction of a moment before Jim starts to talk himself down like he does...
Calm down, Jim. Calm down.
He hears, "Calm down, Jim." From Sadie.
Exactly.
She says it first?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like she knew what was in his mind or inside him, like before he even did anything.
Oh yeah, she knows. She can sense that.
How do you suppose that was happening? I mean, maybe she...
I don't know. I mean, Jim thinks maybe she can feel a change in the way he's moving.
I have body tremors when I'm starting to really get furious.
Maybe Sadie can pick up on those tremors. And Jim says this just kept happening.
She does it all the time. And, it makes you stop to think. If I would go off on a person or something like that, I wouldn't have any remorse or anything. But, I mean, it's just a little innocent animal
that seemed to know him in this really intimate way. Which kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
But Sadie didn't do it while I was there. So I left Jim this tape recorder and I asked him to try to get something like this on tape, just so I could prove it to people.
Say something. You can say something to the microphone, huh?
A week or so later, I got the tape back.
What do you have to say?
And Sadie was on there saying all kinds of things, like, "Hello."
Hello.
She said her name. She said, "Good girl." Things that I could imagine Jim saying to her.
But did you ever get a sense from anything she said that there was a kind of weird, intuitive exchange happening or something?
Not really. But I thought if it happens as often as Jim says it happens, that someone must have seen it.
Yeah.
So I called this woman who runs a coffee shop around the corner from his house, asked her if she'd seen it. She hadn't.
No.
Then I figured I could call the company that runs the buses and the trains that Jim rides every day, thinking that maybe one of their drivers would have seen him get upset about something.
And?
Nothing. And then I called Jim's best friend, Larry, and I figured if anyone has seen this, it would be Larry, because he's around them, like, all the time. He hadn't either. So I called Jim to ask if I was, like, missing anybody. He didn't answer, so I left a message. Left another message. Then finally...
Hello?
Hi, Jim. I got him on the phone. It's Pat again.
Yeah, go ahead.
It seems like nobody else has ever seen her or heard her say those kinds of things to you.
Well, she definitely has said those. But, I mean, she's not going to say the same thing every time she talks to me.
Right, but has anyone ever seen her talk you down from being mad?
No, because most of the time people aren't around me when I'm having a mood swing.
I started to wonder, like, is this the kind of thing a parrot is even capable of? So I decided to check.
Hello,
I called the scientist.
I'm Dr. Irene Pepperberg, Adjunct Associate Professor at Brandeis University.
She's basically the world's expert on African gray parrots. So I asked her, have you ever heard of anything like this before?
Not exactly, but it doesn't surprise me.
In fact, Irene told me that something kind of similar had happened to her once.
Yes, I mean, there's...
With this parrot named Alex that she worked with for like decades.
Basically, when
Irene told me that whenever Alex would get out of line...
not preening and instead of working or butting in with the other birds when he should be quiet so we could train them, we'd say to him, calm down, just calm down. And one time I come storming into the laboratory because I've just come from a horrible faculty meeting when I was in Tucson. And Alex takes one look at me and he says, calm down.
Really?
Yeah. And I actually stormed off and I said something to the effect of, don't you tell me to calm down. And I went into my office and slammed the door.
And Irene says that a parrot, like Alex or Sadie, probably doesn't know
What calm down means, or you'll be okay, Jim. She may not know what each of those little phrases mean,
but she knows that when she says calm down, Jim calms down.
so she has learned from association that that will bring her flock mate back to normal.
Which is a big deal for parrots, Irene says, because they're prey, so they're constantly looking out for each other, trying to keep from getting eaten. And in Sadie's case,
She's in a flock of 2 at this point, so if she wants to feel comfortable while preening or eating, she needs to know that he's going to be watching out for her. Remember, she doesn't have a big flock. She just has him.
Wow, so in the end, what do you make of all this?
well, I mean, I can't prove that she does the things Jim says she does. But on the other hand, everyone I talk to around Jim says that whatever is happening between them is keeping him from threatening people on the street, from punching dents in people's cars. It's just keeping him a better guy.
Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't matter.
I don't care if anybody believes me or not. You know, it's not, I'm not here to prove anything to anybody. That's not the point. The point is, I know what she does, and that is that. No,
Say hello. Not burp. No, don't eat. No eat.
Thanks to Pat Walters.
Come on, fly home.
Into Sadie?
Good girl.
Into Jim?
See, what are you looking at, huh?
We'll be right back.
She's got her eyes focused on me and trying to figure out what you're doing with the mic.
Visit our website, radiolab.org. You can see pictures of Jim and Sadie, and you can subscribe to our podcast, radiolab.org.
Hi, this is James Eggers.
Hello, Lab. It's Lulu.
Radio Lab is funded in part by the
Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, enhancing public understanding of science and technology in the modern world.
More information about Sloan at www.sloan.org.
Radio Lab is produced by
WYC.
Okay. And this message.
This is Molly in St. Paul, Minnesota. Radiolab is supported by Progressive Insurance, providing tools designed to help customers consider options from multiple insurers. Comparisons available at progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Now that's Progressive.
Hi, my name is Brittany Gervais, and I'm calling from Terrace, British Columbia. Radiolab is supported by Babbel, a language app that teaches real-life conversations in a new language, like Spanish, French, and German. Babbel's 10 to 15-minute lessons are available in the App Store or online at Babbel, BABBEL.com.
I'm Nancy Dwyer Chapman, and I'm a proud member of the Listeners Legacy Circle. I really think it's important to show your appreciation through support, and that can be by what I've done, which is to put WNYC in my will.
Include WNYC in your estate plan. Call 646-829-4587 or email legacygiving@wnyc.org.
WNYC supporters include Rallo Rugs, located at 50 Orchard Street. For over 30 years, Rallo has been offering authentic, handcrafted, modern, and traditionally designed rugs. Closing spring 2018. More at RalloTibetanRugs.com.
WNYC, independent journalism in the public interest. 93.9 FM and AM 820. NPR News and the New York Conversation.
Hey, I'm Jad Abumrad.
I'm Robert Krulwich.
This is Radiolab.
And this hour we are discussing, well, we're discussing the little changes that people can make to solve huge problems.
Problems that seem unsolvable.
For the story I would like to tell you, Jad,
Yes,
this
sir.
will involve two rather celebrated people. You know, I sometimes go on stages and talk to people who've just written books or that sort of
90
thing.
Second Tree Boy.
Yeah, this is not that. This is the World Science Festival.
Right.
And we take people from these things and put them on our radio programs.
Yes,
all
we
the
do.
time.
But we don't do it enough.
Well, we're going to do it now.
Let's do it.
So, in just a moment. So we go now to the Danny and Sylvia Kay Auditorium at the campus of Hunter College in Manhattan.
Wait a second. Just set it up for us a little bit. Like, what are we about to do?
Well, so the idea of this World Science Festival evening, there are people who wander around the world who have a problem which is called face blindness. Weirdly, both these men are face blind. So when they look at a face for 10, 20, 60 minutes, the other guy's face just doesn't get in or stick into their heads. I chose two people. One of them is Oliver Sacks, our regular. Oliver, he's a neuroscientist, and he's like...
Oliver is face blind?
Oh boy, is he face blind. I mean,
He can't recognize faces?
But you'll see. The other guy, who we're going to call Chuck, the other guy is one of the greatest portrait artists in the world. He has, as many of you know, for decades now, created art, big paintings, some little, but usually huge paintings, mostly of faces. Here he is, Chuck Close. I thought it would be interesting to bring these two people together, face-blind Oliver, face-blind Chuck, and discuss what many people think of as a very rare situation.
Who are you guys again?
We don't know who you are either. All right, so the both of you, how long ago did you discover, if indeed that's the right word, that you were unusual in this regard?
I think probably when I was
Oh, you can't hear? Okay, so tell you what, I'll just stick this thing in front of you and say something.
Say something.
That's better. So you missed the first part of the program, but Oliver was saying, so you were in a class with other kids. If you had a friend who was like, you know, a pal, would you take a beat to know who it was?
Yeah, so say Jonathan Miller became a good friend. He's tall and gangly, he has red hair, and his movements are fluid and evocative and wonderful. But
if Jonathan Miller was brought in paralyzed and totally straight, would you know it was Jonathan Miller? Or do you have to see the hair and the movements?
No. When I have got to know someone well, then I will recognize the face. But it takes a long while. And with
and even then it has to be reinforced, right? You have to keep seeing.
So if you've spent 4 minutes with the person and then you walk away and come back 2 minutes later, do you know who the person is? If 20 minutes with the person, time make a difference?
I tend to lose it within minutes.
Within a minute. You? Same problem?
Same problem. I can spend an evening talking to someone, looking at them across the table, and I'd see them the next day. I'd have no idea I'd ever seen them, nor do I remember their name.
But when they open their mouth, would you say, oh, that's the one, or not even?
No. And a lot of it's context. If they walk into my studio, I figured they'd walk into my studio because they're supposed to be there. Then I interview them for a while to find out who they are.
Are you just trying to subtly find, like, so who is this? Is that
who
this?
the hell is this person? Why are they in my studio?
Now, in your case, if that person were to suddenly flatten out and work it and be still on a page.
Well, everything in my work is determined by my learning disabilities. So, face blind, I'm sure I was driven to paint portraits by being face blind. That is, I know now that if I can flatten an image out and scan it the way I work, I can commit it to memory. And I have almost photographic memory for things that are flat.
And still?
Still, yeah. But
so being in space and moving around makes the face invisible. Fixing it makes the face
you
memorable.
Move your head a half an inch, to me it's a whole new face I've never seen before.
Wow. Have you ever not recognized yourself?
Yeah, I'm always, several times I have started apologizing to large, clumsy, bearded people and realized that it's a mirror.
That's a mirror?
It's a mirror. But it's even gone a stage further than that. Fairly recently I was in a cafe in Chelsea Market with tables outside, and while I was waiting for my food, I do what people with beards often do. I started to preen myself, and then I realized that my reflection was not doing the same thing. And that inside there was a man with a beard, possibly you, who wondered why I was sort of, making faces at him. So I may take other people to be myself, as well as to recognize myself.
I was wondering how you once you realized that you were preening your beard in front of a bearded man. Did you like look down? And
I did look abashed. I often look abashed.
Well, now let me just ask about: is this just a face problem? What about emotional? Can you, if you can't see a face, can you ever read sadness, happiness?
Yeah, I don't think I have any trouble reading how someone is feeling. I think I'm actually pretty good at that. You know, the way I work is to make this kind of Brobdingnailian world in which I make the face into a landscape, and I journey across that landscape like Gulliver's Lilliputians, crawling over the face of a giant, not knowing that they were on the face of a giant, but knowing everything about that face. And then what I do is I put all that information together, the kind of nose and nostril, the corners of the mouth, whatever, and I can commit it to memory. So I know that it's no accident that I was driven to make portraits of people who matter to me.
But if the person whose face you can't read's lips are trembling, or if they have a downcast look in the eye, or if they're being brave, can you assign emotion to a facet of a face?
Yeah.
And you too?
Well,
talk to the mic.
Well, I can't paint or whatever, but I think I'm as sensitive to emotion as, and little things, including little grimaces which indicate that someone is lying.
Now here's a difference I sense, just to complete this sort of look at what you can and can't do. Oliver can remember, when I ask you about things you've written 22 years ago, a lot of times if you talk to an author about something they wrote 22 years ago, they give you a sad look of, well, that was a long time ago. But you seem to remember much of what you have learned. You seem to remember very little of what you have learned. Well, let me be gentle about that. Like, when you were in high school, it was time to take the test.
Right.
You once described to me an all-night bathtub.
No, I used a kind of sensory deprivation tank in order to memorize things, and It's very hard for me. I don't know how to add or subtract without using the spots on dominoes, a visual system. I still don't know the multiplication tables. I didn't take algebra, geometry, physics, or chemistry. If the junior college in my hometown had not taken every taxpayer's son or daughter, I could never have gone to college.
Wow. So you're a wreck.
Yes.
With a kind of flat.
Of you has been kind of interesting. The both of you are very, very smart, so you just put your intelligence where you have to.
One of the great quotes I've ever heard is from the great painter Robert Rauschenberg, who was about the most learning disabled dyslexic person I've ever known. And he said, when you're this way, you have to find other venues for your intelligence.
Right.
You have to prove to your teachers that even though you're not going to be able to spit back the names or dates, that you care about the material. And we have to prove to the people who we see that we care about them, even though we're not going to recognize their faces and maybe remember their names. So you have to be charming, you have to be a bull, you have to be fast on your feet and figure out how you're going to explain your way out of the fact that you don't know who they are or remember them.
Do you find people calling you like a snob, or I mean, like what do you mean you don't know me? I'm the host of this dinner party, kind of thing.
Yes. Usually, my assistant Kate will say to people beforehand, before they come in, don't ask if he remembers you, because he'll say no. And to me, she says, don't just say no. Say, I'm awful with faces. I wouldn't recognize my own mother. But I'm not good at bull. I tend to withdraw.
You withdraw.
Yeah.
So you solve it by going into a corner and not talking to anybody.
Well, it doesn't solve it. It often makes it worse. But
my approach is to be more outgoing, more friendly, whatever, and to try and charm my way through things. And I also lecture and talk all the time about face blindness and my other problems, so that people are aware that I have them and they'll cut me some slack.
But you go out like every chance you can, right? And you stay in every chance you can, right?
Well, more or less.
Yeah.
No, I don't stay in, but there are other things beside human beings. When, for example, I first visited Australia, I came back with hundreds of photos, and people looked through them and said, yes, but didn't you meet any human beings? Because all my photos were of scenery and plants, where I'm very at home.
And I noticed that when you get in the elevator in your apartment, you don't have any idea who the neighbors are, but you do look down, right?
Oh, I know their dogs.
So if they were to switch dogs, you'd just be,
Well, I would notice.
Yeah.
But if you see them without the dog, you don't know who they are, right?
No idea.
No.
So this charm offensive that you go on, what does that, like, how, if you have no idea who you're talking to, what are the charm moves?
Well, not always is it charming. I didn't recognize a woman I'd lived with for a year. 2 years later, and there's no amount of charm that is going to get you through a mistake like that.
Like, do you make fun of yourself?
Oh yeah, self-deprecating humor will cover a great deal, and if you laugh at yourself, you're giving permission for other people to see it as less than the most tragic condition. It is funny, you know. It's funny. I wish I didn't have it, but it's funny.
What about lots of neurological conditions are comic. They can be both awful and comic.
Yeah.
And it's important.
Well, there's a gallows humor in rehabilitation hospitals for that very reason.
Do you think of what you do as an expression of the situation you find yourself in?
Sure. In every way. I mean, I have trouble in a global sense with the whole. But if you break it down into small enough bite-sized units, incremental units, then I make this big, overwhelming problem into thousands of little more solvable problems. I've just found a way to, take my deficits and use them rather than banging my head against the wall.
Well, let me show you Lyle. This is Chuck 15, and then we'll do Chuck 16. So in Chuck 15, it's going to be a person you know named, who is Lyle?
Wait, now what's happening? What is this right here?
So, Jared, what you should do is you should imagine it's a detailed slide, and what you see is lots of boxes with almost like mirror-like shiny nuggets in each box.
Is this when you're looking at a Chuck Close painting really close? Is that what you're describing?
Yes, it's a detail. So it's the lower lip and chin of somebody who he calls Lyle. When people stand right in front of Lyle's mouth, there's a little bit of confusion. You can't quite read it right away.
Well, the closer you get to something, normally the more information you get. But the closer you get to one of mine, the less information you have. You have information.
But when you step back, these very abstract, flat little cells suddenly turn into a very interesting face.
Well, here's what I don't understand, though. If he's blind to the face, how do you even build it up? Like, don't you have to be able to see the thing that you're building to?
If he can fix it, which the photograph does.
Oh, he takes a picture first.
He takes a picture first.
And then what?
Then he graphs it, so he makes it into lots of little boxes. It looks like a giant checkerboard. And then he goes into each checkerboard, and he then repaints it.
Oh.
Magically, when you step away, there is the thing that you can't see.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So he's able to see the details within those boxes well enough to be able to construct them, and then trust that what will emerge is a face.
Yep. And the magical part is not only do you suddenly get the reveal of the face, but with the reveal comes a sense of the person. Okay, so let's go back to the situation. By the way, is there any cure for this? That that if you have this facial blindness, does anyone get cured of it?
Not so far as I know.
Okay.
But I think it's important to say, and I portrayed myself as sort of as withdrawn or helpless, but I think I also have a vivid love of humanity, as Chuck has. But for me, the portraits take the form of narratives, of stories.
Yeah. Well, your words paint the most specific portraits of people's lives, and I always have identified your characters as vivid a portrait as anything anybody could do in any other art form. And you celebrate your connectedness with humanity in a really important way. I mean, it's a way that we can identify with, even if it's a problem we don't have. Empathy is the basis of, I think, the mortar that holds society together. And telling stories in a riveting way that allows us to empathize and care about these people. My grandfather had Tourette's syndrome, and reading about a character with Tourette's syndrome in one of your books, I cried through the whole thing.
How widespread is this condition? The two of you have it.
The best estimate is that it's fairly severe. There may well be a symmetrical curve. Chuck and I are in the worst 2 or 3%, but probably not the worst 1%. There are people who are far worse.
So you want to give me a guess? You think it's like 10% of the world? 1%?
The fairly severely affected people are 2 to 3%, which is 6 to 8 million people in this country.
Well, let's do a test to see whether this audience. Let's just see how good or bad you guys are. We're going to do a little fun test of your face, and the way it works is that 10 celebrity faces.
What is this?
So here's what's happening. We decided to give the whole audience a face test. 10 celebrity faces will be flashed on the screen for 15 seconds each. Now, we took 10 very famous celebrities. They included the President of the United States of America, fabulous movie stars from the past and the present.
You just put their face up and say, do you recognize me?
We put their faces up, but we erased their hair.
Huh. Oh, just the face.
Only the face.
That's interesting.
So imagine like Johnny Depp, but no hair.
Take away his hair. The question is, would you recognize
this person?
I would think people would recognize. I mean,
well, so would I. But when I read out the names, here I am reading out the names. Number 6 is Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp.
That's what he's like without hair?
That's what he's like without hair.
People sound surprised.
I'm going to ask for a show of hands, all right, now. And so then I said, well, please raise your hand if you got any person right. Anyone at all. Almost everybody. Oh, me. Lower your hand if you only got 1 or 2 right. Okay, so now some hands go down. Lower your hand if you only got 3 right. So now, we're beginning.
Phrasing this in an odd way, only got 3 right.
Lower your hand if you only got 4 right.
Only is such a funny word.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, thank you, Chuck.
But we keep going. Please now, lower your hand if you only got 9 right. The remaining hands...
Wait, how many hands are up at this point?
About 6.
Out of 1,000?
Yep. How many? The remaining hands are, I got 10. Could you stand if you got 10? I'd just like to see who you are. Wow. The number of people... What?